If you are over the age of 55, you have almost certainly noticed a deeply unsettling, entirely invisible perimeter slowly, quietly closing in completely around your daily life. You might find yourself naturally avoiding highly crowded spaces, feeling subtly anxious about navigating unfamiliar busy grocery store aisles, or deeply hesitating before walking on uneven grass or a slightly gravelly path. You are immediately told by society, by the media, and by dismissive doctors that this shrinking of your physical world is just a normal, expected, harmless part of getting older. But that is a highly dangerous, deeply placating lie. The ultimate stakes are absolute. This subtle physical hesitation is the exact, undeniable outward manifestation of your physical brain literally shrinking and aggressively losing heavy vital tissue mass. Today we are going to reveal a completely free, highly clinical neuro-pacing walking technique that actively forces your central nervous system to physically grow, permanently protecting your absolute independence. For entirely too many decades, the modern medical establishment in the highly profitable fitness industry have placed a massive, suffocating, and entirely unjustified burden of guilt squarely onto your tired shoulders. Whenever you expressed deep anxiety about your worsening brain fog, your persistent mental fatigue, or your terrifying loss of physical confidence, you were subtly but firmly told that you were simply failing to exercise correctly. You were sternly lectured that you needed to achieve exactly 10,000 steps every single day. You dutifully bought the heavy, expensive orthopedic shoes, you purchased the digital tracking watches, and you walked endlessly, exhaustingly, on perfectly flat, completely hard concrete sidewalks. Yet, despite all of your intense, painful physical effort, your memory still terrifyingly slipped, and your mental clarity continued to aggressively fade. It is absolutely imperative that you understand right now, in this exact moment, that the cognitive decline you are experiencing is absolutely not a moral failing, and it is most certainly not your fault. You have been the completely unwitting victim of a massive, generational, highly profitable marketing scam. To completely dismantle this paralyzing fear and profoundly absolve your guilt, we must deeply examine the completely fabricated, highly unscientific origin of the 10,000-step rule. This arbitrary heavy number was not discovered in a pristine, sterile clinical laboratory by brilliant neurologists. It was entirely invented in 1965 by a highly aggressive Japanese marketing campaign completely designed to sell a brand new piece of modern technology, the very first commercial pedometer. They called the device the Manpo-K, which literally simply translates to the 10,000 steps meter. They chose that specific number not because it was biologically optimal for the human nervous system, but simply because the Japanese character for 10,000 strongly visually resembled a small, healthy man walking. For 60 long years, the entire global medical community lazily, tragically adopted this empty marketing slogan as absolute medical gospel. You have been forced to survive in a physiological environment that actively, aggressively starves your central nervous system of the precise, complex, novel physical stimuli it absolutely requires to maintain its intricate structural integrity, all while exhausting your physical joints to hit a completely arbitrary, scientifically hollow numerical target. The heavy burden of blame stops right here, today. We are going to entirely abandon the failed, highly destructive 10,000-step myth and look deeply, rationally, and scientifically into the elegant, miraculous mechanics of your own highly adaptable brain. To truly comprehend the monumental life-saving power of the clinical neuro-pacing protocol, we must take a fascinating, deeply illuminating journey into the massive, microscopic architecture of your hippocampus. The hippocampus is a deeply buried, highly complex, seahorse-shaped structure located precisely in the very center of your brain. It is the absolute, undeniable biological command center for two entirely separate, yet intimately connected functions: the formation of your long-term memories and the complex, real-time mapping of your physical spatial environment. When neurologists place the aging human brain inside a highly advanced, deeply powerful functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, a stark, completely sterile, static medical environment characterized by flat, unyielding overhead illumination and absolute zero human presence. The clinical imagery reveals a deeply terrifying biological reality. After the age of 50, a perfectly healthy, entirely normal human hippocampus begins to physically, literally shrink, losing roughly 1 to 2% of its total physical tissue volume every single year. This aggressive, silent, invisible atrophy is exactly what causes the devastating loss of nouns, the terrifying inability to remember a recent conversation, and the profound, deeply paralyzing fear of losing your physical balance. But why is the brain violently shrinking? To deeply understand this catastrophic tissue loss, I want you to imagine a massive, sprawling, entirely empty industrial steel factory, much like the legendary towering Gang Thep complex in the deeply industrialized heart of Tai Nguyen. It is bathed in flat, sterile, unyielding clinical lighting. There is absolutely zero human presence. The massive heavy conveyor belts and the giant automated blast furnaces run in a perfect, unchanging, endless, highly predictable loop. Because the environment never ever changes, the highly advanced computer systems running the factory do not need to learn anything new. They simply operate on total, permanent autopilot. In our modern, highly convenient Western world, your daily physical movement has tragically become exactly like that rigid, deeply predictable steel factory. You walk on perfectly flat, completely engineered concrete sidewalks. You traverse deeply even, perfectly carpeted indoor floors. You walk at the exact same, highly predictable, entirely automated rhythm every single day. Because your physical environment is entirely devoid of complex, uneven topography, your deeply efficient brain places your entire physical body on absolute autopilot. The electrical signal demanding the highly complex spatial calculation required to navigate uneven terrain hits a massive biological dead end. Your brain realizes that it does not deeply need the massive, computationally expensive tissue of the hippocampus to safely survive a walk on a perfectly flat street. And because your brain is a ruthless, highly efficient metabolic furnace, it immediately begins to systematically, aggressively prune and permanently delete those unused neural pathways to conserve vital cellular energy. The concrete jungle is quietly, entirely causing your brain to wither and die from a profound, modern lack of use. We can violently, brilliantly contrast that rigid mechanical environment with the deeply ancient, highly complex, deeply biological terrain your central nervous system was actually genetically engineered to navigate. Imagine the rolling, vibrantly green, deeply uneven Tun Kuang tea hills. The ground is heavily sloped, highly unpredictable, and deeply saturated with complex, shifting roots and soft, yielding soil. Navigating this deeply ancient topography requires profound, continuous, highly complex spatial calculation. Every single individual footstep requires a massive, instantaneous, lightning-fast electrical calculation to assess the exact angle of the ankle, the exact depth of the physical step, and the required, highly specific tension of the calf muscle. The brain must be continuously, relentlessly flooded with massive amounts of novel spatial data, deeply complex tactile feedback, and highly demanding, constantly shifting motor commands. This profound, continuous, highly varied physical challenge forces the entire central nervous system to remain incredibly dense, deeply vibrant, and fiercely alive well into advanced old age. But because we cannot all simply move to the ancient, uneven tea hills, we must brilliantly, strategically utilize clinical neurology to entirely artificially hijack our walking routines and force the exact same massive, life-saving biological response. This brings us directly to the magnificent, deeply powerful, entirely clinical concept of neuro-pacing. Neuro-pacing is not merely a physical exercise. It is a highly targeted, aggressive, deeply structural physical therapy for the very core of your central nervous system. It relies entirely on a profound biological phenomenon known as dual-task cognitive interference. When you force your physical body to walk, and simultaneously entirely deliberately force your conscious mind to perform a highly complex, completely unrelated cognitive task, you instantly, violently shatter the deeply automated state of biological complacency. The sheer monumental power of this protocol does not come from simply walking faster or sweating more. It comes directly from the massive, overwhelming state of neurological panic and intense physiological demand it instantly creates deep within your skull. You are deliberately, intentionally crashing the autopilot system. When you aggressively crash the autopilot, your nervous system immediately, violently responds by flooding your deep brain tissue with massive, heavy, soaring concentrations of two miraculous, highly specialized biological compounds. The first is vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF. When your hippocampus is suddenly forced to work incredibly hard to manage both physical balance and complex thought simultaneously, it begins to rapidly suffocate, desperate for more oxygen. It aggressively secretes VEGF, which acts exactly like a chemical distress flare. This powerful protein physically commands your massive cardiovascular system to immediately initiate a process called angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is the literal, physical, rapid construction of millions of entirely new, highly robust, microscopic blood vessels entirely from scratch, growing them aggressively and deeply into the starving tissue of your memory center. The second miraculous compound is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. As the new, heavy, rich blood supply arrives, it carries massive waves of this vital protein. BDNF is exactly, physically like highly concentrated, incredibly potent, miracle-grow fertilizer for your delicate brain cells. When this deeply powerful protein heavily floods your neural networks, it physically commands your existing dormant neurons to immediately begin sprouting thousands of tiny, highly complex new microscopic branches. It forces the rapid, aggressive construction of entirely new, highly robust synaptic connections, literally building strong, fresh biological bridges, and physically undeniably increasing the total, dense volume of your hippocampus. You are literally, measurably, making your brain bigger. To execute the profound Neuro-Pacing protocol, you absolutely do not need expensive gym memberships, specialized equipment, or grueling physical exhaustion. The protocol is deeply, beautifully simple to execute, but it requires absolute, unyielding, highly conscious dedication. Tomorrow, when you go for your standard daily walk, you are going to intentionally, completely alter the physical rhythm of your movement. For the first 5 minutes, you will walk exactly at your normal, completely comfortable, highly automated pace. This allows the vital synovial fluid to smoothly lubricate your aging joints and safely warms up your heavy muscular system. But at the exact 5-minute mark, you are going to aggressively, deliberately initiate the cognitive interference. You will actively, purposefully force yourself to walk slightly faster than is entirely comfortable, a deeply brisk, highly purposeful pace that makes it slightly difficult to hold a casual conversation, but not so fast that you lose your breath or risk your physical safety. The exact millisecond you increase this physical pace, you must immediately, simultaneously, begin the internal cognitive task. While walking briskly, you will silently, deeply in your mind, begin counting backwards from the number 100, but you must do so by highly complex intervals, specifically subtracting by the number 7. 100, 93, 86, 79. You must perform this highly demanding, deeply unnatural mental mathematics while simultaneously maintaining the rapid, uncomfortably brisk physical pace for exactly 2 continuous minutes. During these 2 highly specific minutes, you will feel a sudden, intense wave of profound mental frustration. You will likely lose your mathematical place. You will feel your physical walking rhythm become slightly clumsy and deeply uncoordinated, and you will feel a deep, intense heat rising in your face. You must deeply understand that this acute, highly uncomfortable sensation of extreme cognitive awkwardness is absolutely not a sign of mental failure. It is the exact, literal, physical sensation of highly aggressive neuroplasticity actively occurring inside your living brain. After exactly 2 minutes of this intense dual-task interference, you will immediately, entirely drop the mental mathematics and smoothly, safely return to your deeply comfortable, slow, highly automated walking pace for a 3-minute recovery period. This specific, highly intentional drop in intense demand allows your newly constructed microscopic blood vessels to safely, fully dilate, violently rushing a massive, incredibly powerful, life-saving wave of deeply life-giving, highly oxygenated, perfectly clean blood straight into the precise neural networks you just aggressively challenged. You will perfectly, flawlessly repeat this precise cycle. 2 minutes of rapid, highly complex cognitive pacing, followed by 3 minutes of deeply comfortable recovery, for a total of 20 to 30 minutes. You are not mindlessly logging arbitrary steps on a digital watch. You are performing highly targeted, deep tissue neurological surgery on your own memory center. Now we must look significantly deeper into the absolute, vital importance of your visual environment while executing this precise protocol. The highly profitable treadmill industry has aggressively convinced millions of older adults that walking completely in place, staring blankly at a static wall or a bright television screen, is a perfectly adequate biological substitute for moving through physical space. This is a massive, deeply destructive biological lie. When you stand in front of a mirror and look deeply into your own eyes, you must realize that you are not merely looking at isolated organs of sight. You are, quite literally, looking directly at the only visible physically exposed portion of your living brain. The delicate, highly complex tissue lining the back of your eye, the retina, is composed of actual literal brain tissue. It is densely packed with hundreds of millions of specialized, highly demanding neurons that are deeply, inextricably wired directly into the hippocampus. When you walk outside in the physical world, moving aggressively forward through space, your deeply exposed retinal tissue experiences a profound biological phenomenon known clinically as optic flow. As trees, houses, and complex physical objects continuously stream past your peripheral vision, this massive, heavy wave of moving visual data is aggressively blasted directly down your optic nerve and straight into the spatial mapping centers of your brain. Forward optic flow is the absolute most powerful, entirely natural biological trigger to quiet the deeply anxious, heavily stressed fear centers of your amygdala. It biologically, mechanically signals to your central nervous system that you are safely, successfully moving forward, completely neutralizing chronic stress and powerfully unlocking the gates of neuroplasticity. When you walk on a stationary, heavily motorized treadmill, your legs are physically moving, but your brilliant brain receives absolutely zero optic flow. Your visual field is entirely dead and deeply static. This creates a massive, highly terrifying sensory mismatch deep within your skull. Your brain becomes deeply confused, highly stressed, and absolutely refuses to release the vital, life-saving BDNF fertilizer. To achieve the absolute maximum, entirely unrestricted, deeply cleansing neurological growth, you absolutely must execute the Neuro-Pacing protocol while physically moving forward through an ever-changing visual environment. However, it is absolutely vital and deeply necessary to proactively, fiercely address the highly specific, incredibly common physical limitations that naturally accompany the long, beautiful aging process. I know intimately that for many individuals currently dealing with severe, unyielding osteoarthritis in their heavy knees, terrifying balance concerns that make walking briskly outdoors highly dangerous, or deeply painful, highly restrictive lower back inflammation, the simple act of trying to walk briskly for 20 minutes can feel deeply agonizing or entirely physically impossible. You absolutely, fundamentally must not risk your physical safety, your delicate joints, or your deep comfort to successfully achieve this massive biological goal. You can completely, effortlessly, and brilliantly modify this deeply critical life-saving protocol to completely eliminate any heavy physical strain or dangerous joint pressure, while perfectly exactly preserving the massive neurological stimulus. If you absolutely cannot safely walk outdoors, you will simply execute the exact same profound cognitive interference while entirely safely seated. You will sit deeply and securely in a highly supportive heavy chair. You will utilize a simple, inexpensive, deeply accessible physical tool known as an arm ergometer, which is essentially a small, highly portable set of bicycle pedals entirely powered by your arms and resting securely on a table in front of you. While safely seated, you will smoothly, comfortably pedal the machine with your arms for 5 minutes. Then, exactly as in the walking protocol, you will aggressively increase the physical resistance and the speed of your arms for exactly 2 minutes, while simultaneously fiercely forcing your conscious mind to perform the exact same complex backward subtraction. By completely bypassing the damaged, highly painful joints of your lower body, and rapidly demanding intense, simultaneous physical and cognitive output from your upper body, you perfectly, flawlessly trigger the exact same massive, heavily vital release of vascular endothelial growth factor and brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You are brilliantly, safely tricking your deeply ancient brain into initiating the massive, life-saving structural repair sequence without ever needing to physically take a single dangerous, painful step. By deeply, consistently executing this highly strategic, profoundly uncomfortable neuro-pacing biological protocol just 3 times a week, completely embracing the intense cognitive frustration and actively, fiercely demanding new growth from your deeply dormant neural pathways, you are entirely, beautifully transforming your biological reality. Clinical research proves with absolute, undeniable certainty that after just 6 short weeks of this precise interference training, the human hippocampus does not simply stop shrinking. It actively, visibly, and completely undeniably gains massive structural volume. If we were to place your highly optimized brain back into that sterile, entirely static magnetic resonance imaging machine, the imagery would beautifully reveal thick, dense, heavily armored new neural pathways, completely replacing the withered, pruned connections of the past. You are no longer helplessly, passively waiting for your precious memories and your vital physical confidence to slowly slip away into the dark. You are actively, aggressively, taking absolute, undeniable control of your own complex neurological destiny. You are physically, mechanically guaranteeing that the deep, beautiful continuity of your brilliant thoughts, the rapid, flawless processing speed of your highly capable mind, and the absolute, unyielding power of your permanent physical independence are powerfully preserved, fiercely protected, and continuously celebrated for long, wonderful decades yet to come. But successfully forcing your hippocampus to aggressively build massive new neural tissue during the day is utterly, entirely useless if those highly fragile, newly grown brain cells are violently destroyed every single night by a massive, entirely invisible household toxin actively suffocating your brain while you sleep. You have beautifully fertilized the garden of your mind, but a deeply insidious, entirely silent chemical gas currently trapped behind the drywall of your own bedroom is actively neutralizing the vital growth factor, completely stopping your cognitive recovery. To immediately discover the terrifying hidden airborne neurotoxin actively poisoning your delicate memory centers and the incredibly simple, completely passive filtration device you must plug in tonight to permanently stop the chemical assault on your newly built nervous system, you need to click the video currently displayed on your screen right now.